be working and being away from home most of the time. I don't think he's a big cook. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I know if I stayed home all day, oh, would I have fun cooking? Oh,
But it has to be somebody that is really interested in that sort of thing. Now, I really believe that maybe Dick um, maybe provides pretty good meal. At least he can.
hmm.
He can.
Oh
Now,
yes.
I don't know whether he does all the time, but for him and Jake, um, I think he's a pretty good provider, and he knows how to make a pretty nice meal too. He can. In fact, I think even when he and his wife were living together, I think he did a lot of the cooking. I think he did.
Hmm. Now, how did you learn to cook?
How did I
Like, yeah,
learn
I
to?
mean, we all know that you're make some great pies and you know,
Well, well, I learned that from my mother. My mother was an excellent cook. Yeah, I always said at first I always said baker. She was an excellent baker. Oh my goodness, when lots of times when I would come down in the morning, here there were all kinds of pies sitting around there that happened during the night. Sometimes sometimes she didn't get to bed at night at all. That she cooked or baked or especially when she went to work when it was quite necessary that somebody had a job. you know, she was a good cook and a good baker.
and so you
You pick it up when you're around somebody like that. You pick it up. Yeah.
you mentioned she went when she went to work. Remind me again. I forget. Where did she work?
So well, she wove. She had looms and wove broad silk materials.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, she worked in silk mills.
And this was while.
Well, she also worked at the hosiery mill when I did too. We
Okay.
both worked at the hosiery.
Okay.
Hmm.
But originally she was working there while your dad was teaching.
Well, no, when my dad was teaching school, she had chickens at home.
Okay, so that was later when you're on the farm.
Yeah, that was on the farm.
Okay.
Oh, yes, 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 yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Well, you see, most of my life I lived on the farm.
Sure.
I was born in town, in Quakertown, but we moved out in 1915, and I was what, 7 years old. I was 7 years old.
Okay.
We moved out. So then, all the rest of my life, I lived on a farm. Yeah.
Um, we were talking about pets and favorite animals and stuff earlier. Yesterday at the party, somebody made a joke about some story about a Guernsey cow.
Oh,
Can you tell me this? Because I don't know what they're talking about. What is the story? I don't know, something about Pop Up selling a cow or something. Or I don't.
well,
What
that
happened there?
happened. Yes. My dad, we lived there on the farm, and Sam was teaching in East Swamp Church, and when he taught, we used to go around the community and pick up the kids and take them to. They had summer school, and even during the school year, often on a Sunday morning, we picked up the kids and took them over to East Swamp to school. And through that, a family came to church, and they had family troubles. They had between the husband and wife. But they had the children that we used to take over to Sunday school, and he was very much interested in the Bible too. Now during those times, I don't know whether that was so prominent. I followed on with his life until I guess he died. Until I not heard from him anymore, but that was years. That was years and years later. But what I was going to say, we used to go and pick up these children, and the parents got into a lawsuit between the two of them, and the husband needed a lawyer, and he didn't have money to pay for the lawyer, but they had this cow, and they asked us whether we would not buy this cow, Jersey cow, for $100. He needed it for his lawyer. And it was due. The lawyer wanted money. It was due. So that time it was during the war, and prices for cattle were really the $100 was cheap because the cattle were high during that time. But he wanted money to pay the lawyer, so he offered this cow to us for $100. So I said, "Oh well, this was a Jersey cow, and they gave real rich milk." I said, "Rich milk would taste pretty good." So we bought the cow, and he got his $100 and gave it to the lawyer, and we used to tie this cow out with a stake. Now, Jimmy was just a little guy. We have a picture of them, I think, with this cow somewhere. Anyhow, and here one time, Sam made arrangements with somebody at church that had a dairy to buy this cow. Well, I was infuriated when I found out that Sam promised to sell this cow because he gave such rich milk. And he didn't tell me why he wanted to sell this cow. He made these arrangements that he was going to, or I guess he, somehow in church they talked about this, and this man that he sold it to was really related to us. It was my mother's first cousin. Anyhow, but he had a dairy, or he had dairy cows. He had a lot of cows that sold the milk. Anyhow, and Sam and I didn't talk for almost 2 weeks because of this cow business. And we didn't get to the bottom. I was peeved because he sold this good cow with this milk, and he didn't tell me why he sold this cow or anything. This was the dumbest misunderstanding. It was too crazy for anything. And then I found out later, and we had a snapshot too, where they tried to, same as to tie this cow out. Put a stake in it and tie it out. And here I found out that one time when he was trying to tie this cow out, it was a stubborn cow, and it butted Sam. It knocked him. Jimmy was a little guy that time, but Jimmy was along there. And I guess Jimmy told me the cow had butted Sam. Sam never told me what happened. It made him angry. And he said he wasn't going to bother with a cow that was that vicious, And he just went and sold it to this guy from church. And that was supposed to be it. But I thought I had some involvement in it because I loved this milk and the cream and stuff, And this was all done without saying a word to me about it. and I was all upset about this selling this cow. And Sam, with his nature as quiet as he was, um, he did this, and then he knew I was upset. So then he came to me uh, to trying to fix this when he knew I was that hurt about this thing. Then he came to me one time. He said, "Now," he said, "I'll try and get an extra job," and he said to make up for this money that we paid for this cow. And then I said, "No," I said, "you don't look for another job." I said, "You have your hands full with what you got." And I said, "I'll never mention this incident again." And we never did. We never, that was it. He never got another job, which I said absolutely not. And then after we hadn't spoken for almost 2 weeks because of this dumb thing that was going on there, just carried it and never came out in the open until then. And then that's the way we settled it. We never had another thing happen like that again. We never went through another thing like that. That settled the whole thing. And after that, it was it. But that's how it was. This cow, and I guess maybe it had happened more than that once. And he said, well, he didn't want an animal like that he couldn't hardly handle. It was always putting somebody. But I never knew that, and they never told me that.
Why do you think he never mentioned it?
He was a quiet person, and he just carried this stuff. This was something that happened to him, and he made his decision, and I was supposed to be out of it. He didn't think I had any business in the thing, I guess. I guess that's the way he was. He was a man of few words. And he did what he thought was the right thing to do, and then you forgot it. But then when it came inside, that I didn't talk to him because of it, because I was upset about it. But then he never even explained the whole thing. Jimmy was a little guy when that happened, and Jimmy didn't tell me until later what happened. It was one of those comedy of errors.
Sure. I would think that if my wife were not speaking to me for 2 weeks, I would do a lot to try to explain.
Well, absolutely. But he went to his business. He would just go out the door and take care of his business, and I was peeved about whatever happened, that I didn't have this rich milk. And then he didn't tell me anything about it. I was peeved that he sold this cow. The whole thing was so ridiculous. And that was the only time we ever had anything between us like that. We never even fought in all the years that we were married. We never had a big fight. If there was anything that displeased him, he would go out and close the door and take it out in the farm, whatever. And he was a quiet sort of a person, and we never fought. But some things you carried inside. If you were real displeased with something, you carried it inside until you decide that was enough.
Sure.
But that was one time that it just exploded, and then it came to a head, and that was the end of that. But it could have, if he'd told me right in the beginning when he sold the cow, why he sold the cow, the whole thing was so ridiculous. But I was so displeased that the cow was gone because the rich milk was gone.
Well, sure.
And I thought I couldn't understand why in the world he sold this cow with no explanation. That was the hard part. He sold it without an explanation. That burned. Silly things you go through.
Well, it's
That's
true.
how you learn to live together.
Through the silly things?
Well, with things like that, I learned. I guess both of us learned after that. He never tried to keep anything that I know of particularly from me after that. Anyhow, nothing that was solid like a cow.
Right. Huh.
It just, the whole thing was silly from beginning to end, and it had no Christian people should be able to, but it was in the newer years of us being married, and he was a quiet person that wouldn't do a lot of talking, or you talk things over. You learn to live out your whatever came up. There would be a way to handle it, and that's the way you did.
Sure.
And then we lived there too with my parents, and you didn't fight among other people. So that was the cow incident. And, but that took almost 2 weeks to straighten out.
That's a long time to be mad.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But I really was upset. And he didn't know how to fix it. He didn't know. He didn't know how to undo what he did. That was what it was. And no, the cow was gone, and I didn't have the milk, and he didn't know. He just didn't know how to fix it. And so he quietly just went along as if there was nothing, and I quietly went along that I was mad. Yeah. Big events in little lives.
Well, there's some truth to that, I suppose.
Now that was a big ado about nothing.
But it sounds like it's a memory the whole family remembers. You know, we talk about our family history that...
Well, it was something that happened. But, you know, when those things happen, you sort of learn from the experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't a pleasant experience, but we learned from the experience.
Well, sure.
The first thing, he shouldn't have tried to keep it from me. Why he sold the cow shouldn't have been a secret from me. And if the cow was, I didn't know the cow was that unruly. Now Jimmy knew it, and he was just a little bit of a guy, but he talked about it later on. But at the time that we were having this going on, he was too little to know really why. I guess that that this was going on. He
Sure.
didn't know. He didn't know.
Hmm.